Welcome to LSC. It's Sports Time. I'm your host, Bob Hintz. Today I have with me Jim Hathaway, former basketball coach over at Kickintown High School. Welcome, Jim.
Nice to be here, Bob.
You had to come all the way from Gloucester to get you here, but we got you here.
Well, it's kind of nice to get reconnected with Bob.
Well, we go way back, but we're going to talk a little bit about growing up in Hampton, because you grew up in Hampton, but you were in the Wythe area.
That's right. That's right. So went to Georgia Wythe Junior High School.
All right. But you played rec ball when you were growing up?
They didn't even have rec ball then. We just kind of played pickup games, neighborhood against neighborhood.
Right.
And I really started playing like in the 6th grade. I had a principal named Ed Zemer who let me in the gym. The junior high team didn't have backboards at the new school, so They came down to the elementary school where I was going, and they practiced there, and that's when I really got hooked on it. Okay,
so you got hooked more on basketball than the other sports because of the way it was. What happened that made that turn for you?
Well, I think it actually started, in the neighborhood. We had some young fathers that played every afternoon when they got off work at the end of the street on the basket that my dad had put up. So we had games out there, so I started playing there. And then when in elementary school, Mr. Zemer, the principal, he kind of let the gym door open in the morning so I could sneak in. And I'd go in there and play in the morning, and then I'd watch the junior high team play in the afternoon. So I really got hooked on it.
Right. Now, when you went from junior high, you went into Hampton High School. Back then, junior high, you didn't play, you didn't have 9th grader in the high school.
No.
As we had later on. You didn't get to high school until you were 10th grade.
That's right. We had 7th, 8th, and 9th grade in the junior high school.
And you went to Wythe Junior High.
I went to Wythe Junior High, made the junior high team, had some really, really great coaches.
Well, who
a guy
do you
named
remember?
Coach Barlow, Stanley Bukuvarakis. I played for both of those
Right.
coaches in junior high school.
And do you remember some of your teammates that you had back then?
Well, Paul Cowley was one of my teammates, Walt Thomas, Graydon Elliott, Eddie Forrest.
Eddie lives right down the street from me.
Yeah. In fact, the team that Coach Barlow coached the first year he was there, he took all the 9th graders and played a junior varsity schedule. And the other guys, I think I was either 7th or 8th grader, we played the junior high schedule.
Oh, okay.
And we did fair, but when we got to high school, we'd played a lot, so it really helped us.
What position did you play?
I played forward.
Played forward, okay. Were you always tall and slender as a kid?
I was 6'1" and a half when I was in the 6th grade. They thought they had a post player in the making, but it didn't work out.
You didn't grow a whole lot much
after that. Did not grow from the 6th grade on.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
All right, then you get over to Hampton High School, JV, as a 10th grade. Was you on the varsity or did you junior
Played
varsity?
JV for half a year, because back then I came up in the middle of the year,
Okay.
actually in January. Played JV for like 6 or 7 games, and then Coach Thomas and Mike Anastasia were the varsity coaches.
Right.
And they moved myself and a friend of mine, Gerald Alcott, to the varsity, and we went to the state tournament with the varsity.
Okay, and what year was that, you remember?
That was probably like 53, around 1953.
Okay. So that had to be quite an experience, being a 10th grade and going to the state tournament and get to see teams from other areas.
It was. It was a lot of fun. It was also a little bit scary, because when we lost, I think it was the second game we were going to play in the consolation game.
Right.
And Coach Thomas told me, he came back and he told me, he said, "You're going to play tonight." Well, that was terrifying. It was fun sitting on the bench watching them play.
Right.
We didn't play, but it was quite an experience. It really was.
And then you was on the varsity for 11th and 12th grade.
Right.
And some of your teammates that you had.
Well, we had Paul Cowley, who was an outstanding player, went to college and did well. Gene Wilson was our center. He was like 6'5", and he scored well. Walt Thomas was the other forward along with me. Graydon Elliott was a guard. And we went to the state tournament, I guess that was my junior year. Unfortunately, we played Newport News in the first round, and nobody beat Newport News then.
Yeah,
and,
they always had good, it seemed like he had some good teams over there.
Oh, they did. They were a powerhouse.
Yeah.
They really were.
Because I remember one year, and this is probably after you graduated, but it looks, Hampton lost like 3 or 4 games, and the only team that beat them was Newport News.
Well, that's true. That's true. They just they'd play sometimes 2 or 3 men on the all-state team. They won 100 games in a row. When I was playing in high school, the team they had, I think, won 3 consecutive state titles. So they were a powerhouse.
Right. All right. So now, after you graduate, have a good 3 years over at Hampton High School, and then you go to Dominion. You go over there to play basketball.
Right. Went to Old Dominion. I was married. Went out for the team. Made the team. But being married and being a student and having to work,
and
something had to go.
Yeah.
And so basketball had to be given up as far as playing basketball.
Right.
You know, still love the sport even though I wasn't playing it.
Right. And then you got your degree in what?
Got a BS in secondary education.
Right.
And then came back to Hampton and was lucky enough to get a job in the school system, and then ended up back at the junior high school teaching.
Your junior high school?
Yes, George Wythe, where I played, went to school, and actually did a little team teaching with a Miss McClary.
Which we have a connection with her.
Right across the hall. And
right.
I had my major was social studies. They had me teaching English and science, which I wasn't real happy about that.
Well, I know.
You know,
I know that feeling. They had me teaching math. That wasn't my forte at all.
I did that for a year, and
right.
That was a good experience.
And then from there, is that when the next year you went to Kecoughtan, brand new school?
Brand new school, and Ed Sotelo was the principal. Hank Bowers was the basketball coach, and they I don't know whether I asked them or they asked me, but I wanted to coach, and they hired me as a JV coach, even though there wasn't a JV program. We had one. And I got paid the grand total at the end of that season of $50 for coaching the JV basketball team, and we had a good team. We played a pretty weak schedule,
right?
But it was a good program because it helped develop kids for the next couple of years.
Right. But now when you were there, they didn't have seniors.
That's correct.
So all those kids that played, they were going to play again the following year because they were juniors and sophomores and whatever. There was nobody ahead of them.
That's right.
So did you guys play a varsity schedule?
The first year, the varsity played like independent schools. They did not play a varsity schedule.
Okay.
And we played, of course, the JV teams from those independent schools.
Right.
Then the next year, that would be the second year the school was open, the varsity played a varsity schedule.
Okay, so now when you're coaching, how are you picking up the way you're going to coach? Are you from Bowers and from Old Dominion, from your Anastasio, the coach you had in high school? How did you decide, okay, I'm going to coach and this is what I'm going to do? Or did you kind of gear it to your players?
It was on-the-job training, and I was obviously influenced by the high school coaches, Coach Thomas and Coach Anastasio. But working with Hank Bowers, that's where I learned to coach.
Right.
Hank was a big. He did the Auburn Shuffle, and I didn't even know what the Auburn Shuffle was.
I thought it was a dance.
And so I learned a lot about coaching from him. But I don't recommend you learn to coach that way. I think the best way, if you're going to coach, you should try to get on with a high school coach as a walk-on assistant and do it that way as opposed to getting thrown to the wolves.
Right, because you had to make the decisions.
Yes, yeah. I started coaching.
Right.
From day one. I hadn't been to a clinic. I hadn't read a book. I was just,
That's what you picked up by playing, right?
You go out there and coach.
Yeah. Now, you're over at Kecoughtan. How many years were you over there at Kecoughtan?
Around 20.
About 20.
Around 20.
Because I know we had some games, and we'll talk about that a little later on.
Did.
But you had some real good players come through your system, and of course we had Howard White. They retired his number here a couple of weeks ago and all, and you were there, and that's how I ran into you. But you had other players than Howard that went through them, and one of them I remember is Rocky Copley, because I got a chance to coach Rocky before he went to you, and Gary Dowdy was another one.
Right.
But talk about some of the players that you can remember that really stick in your mind.
Well, the first year I coached, I had a good team. I had a better team than they had a coach because I was young and experienced. But John Hill was an outstanding player.
Right. He came from Sims.
Yes, he did, and he went and played at UVA. Larry Willis was an outstanding player on that team. They were both seniors the first year. They were juniors that year.
Right.
And then we went from there, and the first really good team that was kind of, like I would say, I had coached that team. I had them from the time they were 10th graders on. And assistant coach Gary Kilborn. And that team had Lynn Gregory, who was 6'5", ended up going to Randolph-Macon. It had Hurley Freeman, about 6'6", went to Bluefield State, Howard White. So we had some outstanding players on that team.
Well, I remember Lynn Gregory. He came from Buckrow.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
Yes, he did.
And there was another kid you got from Buckrow, I believe, Charlie Tyler. Do you remember
Charlie?
Charlie
Tyler a little bit later. He played with Howard for, Howard was a senior and Charlie was a junior. And Charlie went to VMI on a full scholarship. One of the best athletes we ever had. He was probably the best rebounder we ever had.
He was just, when I had him over at Buckrow, he was like a man among those kids.
That's the way it was in high school.
But he was such a fine young man that you didn't walk around the halls and you didn't know that he was that good. I mean,
that's exactly right. And he was young.
Yeah.
You know, he was built like he might have been, you know, in his early 20s, but he was just a young guy. He's 15 years old.
Right.
You know. But he became a good player for us, but he also excelled at VMI.
Right. Everybody wanted to play football, but he loved basketball.
He did love basketball.
He loved
His dad was a basketball player.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so anyway, some of the other players, can you remember from your teams? And before we get to the other players, I want to talk to you about coaching your sons. Here you coach not one, but both of them. You coach Jim and then you coach Mike. That's tough.
That is tough. It got easier with Mike because I learned a lot of things coaching Jimmy. We had a long conversation before the decision was made for him to play at Kecoughtan, but he just wanted to play at Kecoughtan, you know, and so that was difficult. It was difficult for him and difficult for me because you know him too well.
Right. Well, and the other kids think, well, he made the team because he's coach's son. You know,
it's hard. It's very difficult.
And it's got to be hard on the kid.
It is hard, and I thought he handled it pretty well. Now, when Mike came along, I handled it a lot better.
Okay.
And therefore, it was easier on Mike.
Yeah. Now, Mike, for those that don't know, is officiating high school basketball. Saw him over doing the Hampton game the other night over at.
Another thing that made it easier for Mike. Mike's team was a little bit deeper, had a little bit more talent. The league wasn't as strong, so I think we might have ended up 500. When Jimmy's team, he was playing right after Phoebus opened, and Phoebus had kind of. Well, the talent got split.
Right, because you lost Boo Williams.
We lost Boo Williams and Brian Tyler and Jerry Saunders, some really outstanding big players. We had the guards, they had the big players.
Right.
And so we went through a period there of adjustment. And that's when Jimmy played. And so the teams, you know, they were competitive, but, you know, win 6 or 7 games. So that even made it more difficult.
Right. But I know that when Mike came along, he was your point guard, and it was almost like having a coach out there on the floor because he knew what Daddy was.
Oh, yeah.
That had to be an advantage a little bit anyway.
Well, I think it was, and we ran the Old Dominion fast break, so he was the point guard, and he'd been watching us play since he was a little guy, so he knew what was expected.
Right. Now. We're going to kind of wrap this up, but I'll tell you, it's been a pleasure to get you in here and talk, but I want to talk a little bit about one game, because I can remember this game. We went over and played over at Kecoughtan, and you guys are just kicking our tails the first half, and then the lights go out in the gym. They come back on, and you guys couldn't buy a basket, and we couldn't miss. And I think you said, did you go back and turn off the lights?
I might have.
But we had some good contests together. I think you probably beat me more than I beat you, but it was a great rivalry. Yeah.
Well, we did. We had some good games. And the game where the lights went out, so you all came back and won. So you remember that game. I don't really remember that game. I've learned to remember the games we won.
But you did remember when the Johnson kid couldn't miss a basket.
Yes,
in the
I do.
regionals.
I have nightmares because that kept us out of going to the regional tournament.
But, you know, and sometimes the kid make a coach look awful good.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, that's right.
You
know better than the kids you coach. Sometimes the kids you coach are better than you.
Yeah, I hear that. Just some of the things that you can take with you from coaching that you couldn't get from any other walk of life.
It's a relationship with the players you coach with. I mean, that you coach, relationship with the coaches, those you coach against and those you coach with, and you end up with some fantastic, and the players. I think I learned more from the players than they learned from me. just wonderful. And I have connections with those players now, and it's that's the fun part about coaching.
Right. Well, I appreciate you coming in.
Nice to talk to you about it. It really is.
I want to thank you for tuning in to LSC and Sports Time. I want to thank my special guest, Jim Hathaway. I'm your host, Bob Hintz. Till next time.